Christmas Eve began like a frozen nightmare, sharp and silent. The cold wasn't just outside. It felt personal, like it had a reason. The temperature had dropped to -10 degrees Celsius, the kind of cold that bites fast and refuses to let go. That was the night my father locked me out of the house for talking back at dinner. One sentence, one mistake. I stood barefoot in the snow, my breath turning into pale clouds, while warmth and laughter stayed locked behind glass. Through the window, I watched them open presents without me, the lights glowing softly around a tree that felt farther away than another world. Time stretched. The cold crept in slowly, then all at once. My fingers burned, then went dull. My legs stopped feeling like they belonged to me. About an hour later, when my thoughts had slowed and the snow felt heavier, a black limousine rolled up the driveway. It stopped with quiet confidence. The door opened, and my grandmother stepped out, Josephine. She was a billionaire, powerful and precise, and she hadn't visited in 7 years. She took one look at me shaking in the snow, then looked at the house. Her face didn't change. She said one word, calm and final, demolish. Before I could even understand what that meant, the limousine doors flew open. 2 men dressed in black moved fast and clean, like they had trained for this exact moment. They didn't knock. They didn't hesitate. They stepped onto the frozen lawn, lifted me out of the snow like I was something valuable, and carried me away. I was too stiff to fight. The cold had gone past pain into something heavier and dangerous. They placed me inside the car, and the door shut with a deep sound that cut off the wind, the ice, and the sight of my stepsister opening the laptop that was meant for me. Inside, everything was still. Warm air filled the space, smelling of leather and money. Across from me sat Josephine. She didn't look like a grandmother. She looked like a CEO about to end a company. Her silver hair was sharp and neat. Her cashmere coat looked expensive enough to erase my failed startup on its own. She didn't rush to comfort me. She didn't ask how I felt. Feelings were not useful in moments like this. She picked up a thick wool trench coat and threw it over me. It landed heavy, solid, protective. "Put your arms through," she said, her voice low and steady. "Hypothermia is a boring way to die, Arya." My hands shook as I struggled into the sleeves. My teeth chattered hard as warmth hit my skin, stinging as blood began to move again. I turned my head toward the window. Through the dark glass, I could see my father, Gregory, standing inside with a glass of wine raised high. He looked pleased, powerful, like a man in control of everything he could see. He had no idea what was already happening. "I just told him the turkey was dry," I said, my voice barely working. "That's all." Josephine kept watching the house. "You think this is about a turkey," she said calmly. "You think this happened because of dinner." She turned to me then, her eyes sharp and focused. "He didn't lock you out because you were rude. He locked you out because he felt small. Look at him." Gregory was laughing now, showing happiness for his new wife like it was a performance. "That is a weak man," Josephine continued. "A man who only feels strong when someone else is hurting. He measures his power by your suffering. Your shaking is not punishment. It is fuel." Her words hit harder than the cold ever did. For months, I had believed I was the problem, that my failed business had made me worthless, that staying quiet and obedient would earn me my place again. In that moment, everything shifted. I wasn't broken. I was being used. "He thinks he's teaching me a lesson," I whispered. "He is," Josephine replied, pressing a button on the intercom. "But now it's his turn." The lights in the house went out. One by one, everything died. The Christmas tree went dark. Gregory froze in place. Inside the limo, blue light from the dashboard painted Josephine's face. She wasn't smiling. This was not revenge. This was correction. "Stay warm," she said, leaning back. "We're not leaving yet. I want him to see the car. I want him to know the game is already over." Wrapped in wool, I watched the house. In darkness, without the lights, it didn't look grand. It looked empty, cold, like a tomb. I hadn't come back home for love or hope. I came back because I was broke. My tech startup had failed just before the world was ready for it. I ran out of time and money. Bankruptcy pulled me back to Aspen like a chain. Living under Gregory's roof had a price, and I paid it every day. Silence when I was mocked. Obedience during lectures about success he never earned. Compliance when my stepsister treated me like I didn't belong. I looked at my hands. They were red, but steady. I didn't think he'd actually do it. I said softly, "That's how cruelty works," Josephine replied. "It starts small. A joke, an interruption, a delay. He lowers the temperature slowly until you forget what warm feels like." She was right. I had adjusted myself to their coldness. I thought I was being strong. I was being trained. I thought being quiet would make them forgive me. I said, "You didn't fail," Josephine said firmly. "You tried. They never have. They only take." She tapped the screen. Security footage filled the console. Inside the house, they stood by the firelight, faces lit by phones. They weren't worried. They were irritated. "Look at them," she said. I watched as the celebration turned into annoyance. Patricia waved her hands, angry, sharp in the fire's glow. I didn't need sound to understand. She was complaining about the inconvenience. The power outage was ruining her party aesthetic. Then I saw Ree. She was sitting on the sofa holding a silver-wrapped box. My box, the one I had wrapped for myself, containing the last piece of technology one owned. A high-performance laptop I had salvaged from my company's liquidation. I had brought it to the living room intending to work after dinner. Restore the paper. She opened the lid. Even in the granite night vision of the security feed, I could see her smile. "He said so," Mathinkto Gregory laughing. He nodded, pouring again a third drink in the dark. He wasn't worried about his daughter in the snow. He was letting his stepdaughter loot her corpse. "She's taking my laptop," I said, my voice flat. "That has my code in it. My intellectual property. She's taking it because she believes you don't exist anymore," Josephine said in tire minds. "You're already gone. Deleted. Patricia is probably telling her right now that you're having a tantrum somewhere, that she ran off to teach him a lesson. She's gaslighting that girl into believing your suffering is a performance." I watched Gregory raise his glass again. He looked comfortable. He looked like a man who believed he owned the world and everyone in it. "He thinks the darkness is just a power outage," I said. "He thinks he is the only one woke and turned the lights off." Josephine correct. "He's about to learn that he don't even own the switch." He picked up a sleek black phone from the console. She didn't dial. She just spoke a single command into it. "Execute phase 2. Enter the premises." The car doors locked with a heavy mechanical thud. Outside, Thetwo security agents who had retrieved me started walking toward the front door. They didn't look like guests. They moved like a foreclosure. "Ready?" Josephine asked, finally looking at me. Her eyes were hard, but there was something else there too. "An invitation." "I don't have anything," I said, looking down at my borrowed coat. "I don't have my keys. I didn't have my money." "They have everything," Josephine smiled. A terrifying razor-thin expression. "You have the deed, Arya. You just don't know it yet. Let's go introduce your father to his landlord." The front door didn't open. It yielded. My grandmother didn't knock. She simply walked through the entrance of the estate as if the locks recognized their true master and dissolved. The blizzard rushed in behind her. A vortex of snow and wind that swirled across the marble floor, killing the warmth of the fireplace. In seconds, I followed 2 steps behind, flanked by the security team. I felt like a ghost returning to haunt the living. My coat was heavy, my body was still thawing, but my mind was razor sharp. I watched the scene unfold like a slow-motion car crash. The living room was a tableau of interrupted greed. The backup generator had finally kicked in, bathing the room in a harsh emergency yellow light. Gregory was mid-laugh, a crystal tumbler of scotch raised in a toast. Patricia was admiring a diamond bracelet on her wrist. Ray's was typing on my laptop. They froze. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was heavy. It was the sound of oxygen being sucked out of a room before an explosion. "Mother," Gregory's voice cracked. He lowered his glass, the liquid sloshing over the rim onto the Persian rug. He blinked, trying to resemble his reality. We didn't expect you. The roads are closed." Josephine didn't look at him. She walked into the center of the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a gavel striking a bench. She didn't remove her coat. She didn't smile. She looked at the holiday decorations, the pile of gifts, the food on the table with the clinical detachment of a health inspector shutting down a contaminated pedestrian. "Turn off the music," she said. It wasn't a request. Recess scrambled for the remote, her eyes wide. The Christmas jazz died instantly. Gregory stepped forward, putting on the mask he wore for investors and creditors. The charming, misunderstood Pirachar. "Josephine, really? You gave us a start. We were just having a quiet family evening. Patricia, get my Mathera drink." She must be freezing. "I am not cold, Gregory," Josephine said, her voice echoing through his performance. Butaria was. She stepped aside, revealing me standing in the hallway. I saw the color drain from Patricia's face. Rhea settled my laptop onto her lap, trying to hide it with a throw pillow. Gregory didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed, like a magician whose trick had been revealed by a heckler. "Arya," he sighed, shaking his head with mock disappointment. "I see you went running to your grandmother. Always the victim, aren't you?" "I told you, Mother." She was shaving a tantrum. She stormed out because I offered her some constructive critique on her business. I was just about to go look for her. "You were pouring a scotch," I said. My voice was crispy from the cold, but steady. "And you lit the deadbolt." "Details." Gregory waved a hand dismissively. "It's a drafty house. We were protecting the pipes." Josephine turned to the man standing beside her. I hadn't noticed him in the limo, but he had entered with the excellence of a shadow. He was wearing a suit that cost more than a mid-sized sedan and holding a leather briefcase. "Mr. Vance, the family's shark. Is that a melon established?" Josephine asked him. "Yes, madam," Vance replied. "We have each security logs from the gate, thermal, imaging from the car, and 30 stamp of the lockout. 45 minutes of exposure at least. In most jurisdictions, that is attempted manslaughter. In this family, we call it a breach of contract." Gregory laughed. It was a nervous, brittle sound. "Contract? What are you talking about? This is my house. I discipline mid-utter how I see fit." "That Josephine is where you are mistaken." He gestured to Vance. He placed the briefcase on the coffee table right on top of a plate of untouched appetizers. The sound of the latches snapping open echoed in the room like gunshots. "You don't own this house, Gregory," Josephine said softly. "You never did." Gregor's arrogance faltered. "I have his deed. You signed it over to me 10 years ago. It's in the safe." "You have a piece of paper," Josephine corrected. "You have a forgery that I allowed you to keep because it kept you quiet and out of my portfolio, but the ink on the real document dried 26 years ago." She pulled a single thick document from the briefcase and dropped it onto the table. It didn't look like a Christmas card. It looked like an eviction notice. "Read the beneficiary line." "Gregory," he picked it up. His hands were shaking now. I watched. His eyes scanned the legal text. I watched the exact moment his world ended. This says," he stammered. "It says the estate, the land, and the entire Harrison Holding Company were placed in a blind trust." Josephine said to be transferred to the first female heir upon her 26th birthday. He turned to me. "Happy birthday, Arya." The room spun. I looked at my father. He wasn't looking at the document anymore. He was looking at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't see the tyrant who controlled my allowance, my career cases, and my self-worth. I saw a squatter. "You," Gregory whispered, Thevenham, returning to his voice. "You knew. You planned this." "I knew nothing," I said, the realization washing over me like a warm tide. "I thought I was broke. I thought I was homeless." "You are." Patricia spat, standing up. "This is ridiculous, Josephine. You can't just give everything to her. She's a failure. She crashed her own company. She can't run an estate." "She didn't crash her company," Josephine said coldly. "She was sabotaged. We tracked the short selling in her stock." "Patricia, we know Gregory used his leverage to spook her investors so she would come crawling back home. He needed her here. He needed her under his thumb because he knew this day was coming." Josephine stepped closer to Harrison. "You broke her leg so you could offer her a crutch, and then you kicked the crutch away in a blizzard." "I reset her," Gregory shouted, slamming his hand in the table. "I put food on this table. This is my home." "This is not your home," Mr. Vance interjected, his voice bored and lethal. "Technically, as of midnight, You're trespassing. Trespassing? Gregory's face turned purple. I am her father. Biologically? Yes, I said, stepping into the room. I walked over to Tori, who shrank back into the sofa cushions. I reached down and pulled my laptop from her hands. She did not resist. But legally, you're just alienability I inherited. I looked at the document on the table. My name was there, printed in black ink. It wasn't just a house. It was freedom. It was the capital I needed to restart my life. It was the weapon I needed to end his. What do you want to do, Miss Harrison? Van ceased. Me. He wasn't asking Josephine. He was asking me. The transfer of power was absolute. I looked at Gregory. He was panting, sweating, his eyes darting around the room, looking for an angle. Alley, a way out. He looked at me and I saw him preparing to beg. He was going to play the family card. He was going to talk about blood and loyalty and all the things he had frozen out of me in Hirago. I want him out, I said. Now. Van ceased. The blizzard is getting worse, Patricia cried. You can't throw us out in this. I looked at the window where I had stood, shivering. I looked at the heavy coat Josephine had draped over my shoulders. I don't want them out tomorrow, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that filled the room. I want them out now, and I want everything they own left behind. They leave with what they are wearing, nothing else. Josephine smiled. It was the proudest I had ever seen her. You heard Theodore, she said to the security team. Clear the building. Wait. Gregory lunged toward me. Arya, listen. We are a family. You can't do this. I was just trying to mold you. I was trying to make you tough. You succeeded, I said. The security guards moved in. It wasn't a polite escort. It was a removal. They grabbed Gregory by his tuxedo jacket. He screamed, kicking at the furniture as they dragged him toward the door. Patricia was shrieking, clutching her pearls. Race followed them, looking at me with a mixture of terror and awe. The front door opened again. The wind howled, hungry and waiting. I watched my father being shoved out into the snow. He stumbled, falling onto his knees in the drift where I had been standing. I looked back at the house, at the warmth, at the light. Arya, he screamed. Open the door. I walked to the window. I placed my hand against the cold glass. I looked him in the eye and then I reached for the curtain cord. Demolish, I whispered. I pulled the cord. The heavy velvet drapes slid shut, blotting out the side of him, sealing the warmth inside and leaving him in the cold he had built for me. The room fell silent again. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the scratching of a pen as Mr. Vance prepared the final documents. Well, Josephine said, walking over to the bar and pouring herself a drink. That is how you handle a hostile takeover. She handed me the glass. Welcome home, Arya. If you've ever had to freeze to find your fire, subscribe, share this with someone who needs talk. No, you are not the black sheep. You are the survivor who hasn't been paid.